Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
ESPN had a piece up where Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler, they visited training camps and such, and kind of did a piece where, you know, what are some buzzworthy notes at training camp? What are some of the things that kind of stood out to them at all these training camps? And for the Packers, a couple of notes that I kind of thought was interesting was their thoughts on Matthew Golden, and that kind of relates to the second part, or the second question I threw out there. What is a realistic expectation for you for Matthew Golden? And I threw that out there because of this write-up where they said people inside the Packers aren't quiet about their impressions of first-round receiver Matthew Golden, who has looked the part thus far. Two things that have stood out: his hands and his determination to be great. One person with the team pointed out that he hadn't dropped a pass through the first week plus of camp and connected on a 60-yard deep ball in 11-man earlier in the week. So, I mean, you're hearing a ton of great things about Matthew Golden. But that's why I kind of throw out a question: what are some realistic expectations for him? A couple of the other things that kind of stood out to me was Barryn Sorrell, one player who flashed during the practice I saw, fourth-round defensive end Barryn Sorrell. From winning one-on-one matchups to stopping the run in the 11-man period, he looks quite at home playing NFL football in pads. So just a couple of interesting nuggets I thought were on there, and it kind of like got me thinking a little bit. It's like, and they talk about one other part of here. One clear observation: Love is very comfortable throwing to his tight ends, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, who were featured prominently during this particular session. Part of that was by design, as at least two receivers were on rest days when I visited. So that kind of got me thinking a little bit, okay, who are the players with the most to gain this season and the player with the most to lose this season? I think for me, the player with the most to gain. Now, I agree with a few of you where you have the same player for both, because you can definitely make that case. And Quay Walker, Live and Dream Jeff, Quay Walker is a prime example of that, where he balls out, he's going to get a contract. We've heard Green Bay wants to sign him. They want to sign him. They've been vocal about that. But at the same time, you know, if Quay Walker, if he balls out and they don't sign him, that price tag could probably go up. But if he doesn't ball out, maybe it plummets a little bit. Been very inconsistent. So he is definitely on that line of like, all right, how much do you give him? Because he's kind of been inconsistent, but he has showed flashes. A ton to gain, but a ton to lose. Ton to gain, but a ton to lose. So for my player that I think has a ton, or one player that has the most to gain this season, and again, we could go through a bunch. I thought of Romeo Doubs for a hot minute because Romeo Doubs is entering a contract year. If Romeo Doubs goes out there and he balls out and he has a fantastic year, look at the wide receiver market and contracts. Some team will give him a decent-sized contract and a nice payday and a nice pay raise. It probably won't be for Green Bay, but it'll be somewhere. If Romeo Doubs goes out there, let's say Romeo Doubs gets 1,000 yards this year. He's going to get a contract. Regardless of what happened last year, he's going to get a contract. He's going to get a nice contract. You can make the case for that. You can make the case for Rasheed Walker on the left side. If he is, in fact, the starting left tackle for this year, left tackles, and he plays well, dude's going to get paid. We know how left tackles get paid in this league. He's going to get a big contract, a nice-sized contract. And it's not going to be a Green Bay. So he absolutely has a ton to play for as well. Keyshawn Nixon, I think you can make a case for Keyshawn Nixon in that category as a player with a lot to gain. Because there's questions about, okay, can he actually be a number one corner? Can he be a number one corner? He wants to be a number one corner. The Packers are giving him an opportunity to be a number one corner. Can he do that? Can he be that guy? There's a lot to gain for him this year, being featured as that number one. We saw parts of it last year. But now, how about for a whole season, 17 games into this thing? Those are just a couple of examples of guys. But I'm going to go with Quay Walker, too. Quay Walker was my pick because he is on this thin line. We have seen glimpses. Couple game stretch last year between the 49ers and the Dolphins of, okay, that is finally the linebacker we have been hearing about. The biggest issue for Quay Walker throughout his young career has just been the inconsistency. And at times, it sure looks like, as Living a Dream noted, you're thinking instead of playing at times. There was a play against the Bears last year. I can't remember if it was the first game or the second game, but there was a play where he read it perfectly as a handoff. And he had a chance to just take down the ball carrier at the line or behind the line of scrimmage. And he kind of just stopped. I think it kind of caught him by surprise, wow, I got that right. I'm wow. I think it literally caught him by surprise a little bit where he kind of stopped oh, crap. But that split second made a difference from what could have been a TFL to a gain instead of just tackling the guy and hitting the guy. But if Quay Walker puts it all together, you hear Xavier McKinney last year talk about this guy could be the best linebacker in the National Football League. And you hear about his practice habits and such. But we got to see it on the field. We got to see it on the field. And if we see it on the field this year for Quay Walker, yes, he will get a nice contract. He might get a contract before the season starts. If he doesn't, but he goes out there, balls out, price tag goes up. Because we know it's all about what have you done for me lately. Guys ball out in their contract years, get huge pay raises. It's up to those guys, and maybe it's a little bit of a risk. I mean, look at the Nick Perry contract from a few years ago, right? Balled out in his final year of his deal. Got a new contract from Green Bay. I think it's safe to say he did not play up to that contract. So it's a risk. But I feel like we're still entering, this year for Quay Walker. Remember, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. And part of that was because they thought they could get a deal done with him where it would be cheaper than a fifth-year option. They picked up Devontae Wyatt's fifth-year option, but not Quay Walker. He's got a ton to gain this year. A ton. Financially, a ton to gain in terms of just play on his field, if he can become consistent and be this linebacker that we keep hearing his teammates and coaches talk about. I think anybody who's watched him knows he's got talent. He's got these athletic and physical traits that could make him a very special player in this league. Speed, height, athleticism. But it just hasn't come together on a consistent basis for him yet. And once that does, and if it does this year, boom, that guy's stock goes up. In terms of players who have the most to lose, and again, it could be money-wise, contract-wise, playing time, losing their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we could go about it a couple different ways. On one hand, I was thinking about Christian Watson because I'm like, well, he's injured, but could he have a lot to lose? They always say you can't lose your job if you're injured. That's baloney. I mean, how many times have we seen that happen? But, you see this group of receivers with Jaden Reed, and they're high on Dontavian Wicks. And Dontavian Wicks could be another guy that has a lot to gain or a lot to lose this year, too. He definitely could be in there. Matthew Golden, Romeo Doubs on here and such. But he could be a guy where I think Green Bay would like to keep him. But if they get some ball-out performances from the receivers and tight ends, they may be like, yeah, no, sorry, we're going to go with these guys. So I thought about it a little bit with Christian Watson. I thought a little bit about Rasheed Walker entering his final year too, as I mentioned, a little bit more to gain there. But if he does not play well, and let's say Jordan Morgan unseats him as the starting left tackle this year, Rasheed Walker's price probably just comes down. It goes way down, right? If the second-year guy takes over for him, price tag's going to go down. He's probably going to get a nice deal in the offseason regardless because of the experience he provides, and he has played some high-quality ball. But if Jordan Morgan takes his job, that price is going to go down. So, yes, he has a lot to lose this year too. Luke Musgrave. I think we're all waiting to see this big, fast tight end, right? He's bigger than Tucker Kraft, taller than Tucker Kraft, speedier than Tucker Kraft. But if it doesn't come this year, will it ever come? If he goes out there and balls out and becomes this big-time target, along with Tucker Kraft, there's a lot to gain there. But if he does it, there's also a lot to lose in that second-round pick. I think, Kenny Clark, you can make the case. There's a lot to lose from Kenny Clark, which I think is a sneaky one. Because you go back to Kenny Clark last year, before the season starts, signs that 3-year extension. Okay? Doesn't have a great year last year. Whether it was the toe injury that really affected him, poor play in a new defense, maybe a little bit of both. But it wasn't at the level that we expected. There is a potential out for the Packers and Kenny Clark's contract in 2026. Because Kenny Clark's cap hit, so this year it's $20.4 million if we're rounding. Next year it jumps up to 31.4. 31.4. And that's why I have Kenny Clark as my player with the most to lose this year. Because if his play does not improve from last year, there's a real chance that he could be cut from the Packers. Now, the Packers will have a $17 million dead cap if they moved on from Kenny Clark. But 17 compared to $31.4 million cap hit for a player that underperforms, which one would you rather have? It'd be a tough pill to swallow. I really do feel like, just kind of I'm looking at the contract right now for Kenny Clark. Even if they keep him in 2026, that to me would be his final year unless he just balls out. Because in 2027, he's still under contract. He has a $27 million cap hit, but just a $7 million dead cap. So you're talking about potentially $20 million in savings. But I feel like this is a season for Kenny Clark who potentially has the most to lose. Because if he has a poor performance, again, a season like he did last year, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because of the toe injury. It sounds like it's turf toe, and we know how bad that is and how that affects players, and maybe certain players more than others depending on the position, especially for a defensive lineman. But if he doesn't have a bounce-back year this year, and we're not hearing about 97 making plays on the field, it might be his last year at Green Bay. It very well could be. I thought about going Lucas Van Ness for this. I wanted to go a little bit of a different route because I figured when we threw out the question, a lot of people probably would be picking Lucas Van Ness for the most to lose. And you're exactly right. Because, let's face it, the first 2 years of Lucas Van Ness, we saw a couple of good stuff or good plays. That first year, his rookie year, remember the game against the Bears? He chases down Justin Fields. Is like, there you go. The speed. He looks like Hercules. Showed that. But then it was like, Lucas Van Ness definitely has a lot to potentially lose. Because if he goes in, he's going to be a starter this year. But if he performs this year where it's a subpar performance, there ain't no way they're going to pick up his fifth-year option. I can't. They're not going to do that. And if he doesn't perform at a high rate, at a high level, defensive end becomes a huge need for Green Bay next offseason. If he can't be a guy that gets after the pass rusher and helps collapse that pocket Green Bay is going to be looking for a new pass rusher as early as next offseason. So, yeah, Lucas Van Ness, easy pick too. Not going to argue with that. But I wanted to change it up a little bit because I do think Kenny Clark is entering a pivotal year for the Packers. And he potentially has a lot to lose. It was a disappointing year for him last year. And I get it. The toe injury definitely affected it. But it's a new year now. And if he has a similar type of season this year, but he doesn't have an injury, what's the excuse then? What's the reasoning then? Because there's a very, very real chance to see that this could be the final year for Kenny Clark if he doesn't perform at a high level. So, there's no right or wrong answer to this. Everybody's got different picks, but mine, the player with the most to gain this year, Quay Walker. The player with the most to lose, I'm going to go Kenny Clark. Lucas Van Ness, he's like 1B. Okay? He's like 1B. What about realistic expectations for Matthew Golden entering his rookie season? What's a realistic expectation for you? Is it 1,000 yards? Is that too much? Is it double-digit touchdown catches? Is that too much? What is it? It's not like, he's playing behind Devontae Adams and Jordy Nelson in 2014 or whatever year it might have been. No, that wouldn't have been 14. That would have been Nelson and Cobb, and Devontae was the third receiver. But you know what I'm getting at. Maybe a little bit like 2011 where they were loaded. You had Nelson, James Jones, Driver, and Jennings where it's like, Randall Cobb, good luck. You're going to make more of a difference probably on special teams. You're going to have to wait your turn. Gold's going to get a shot right away. He ain't going to have to wait his turn. So, what is a realistic expectation for Golden this year? So, there is a lot of enthusiasm surrounding Golden's camp so far, offseason, training camp. I mean, he's impressed a lot of people. And there is a lot of hype and expectation. And honestly, there should be when it comes to a first-round pick. And throughout the draft process, Matthew Golden was highly thought of. And I think it probably surprised Green Bay a little bit that he was there, available for their pick. We know about his speed. We've heard a ton about his hands. He's not a body catcher. He's a hands catcher. And considering what we saw last year, with the Packers receivers struggling to catch a football, it's probably a welcome sight. And I think what helps Matthew Golden in this instance, too, is he's got Jordan Love as his quarterback. I'm sure every quarterback wants to have a trust factor with the receiver, okay? Every quarterback has that. They want that go-to guy where they need to pick up that first down, or they need a score, or they need a big play. They're always going to have that go-to guy. And I think if I had to pick one, it's probably been Romeo a little bit for Jordan Love, but, is that go-to guy a big-time difference maker? Golden has that opportunity. He has a golden opportunity to be that guy. And he's going to get opportunities this year. He's not working behind a deep depth chart like the 2011 class when Randall Cobb was a second-round pick. It's like, hey, got to wait your turn between Jordy, James Jones, Driver, Greg Jennings, Jermichael Finley's also in there. Golden's going to get some golden opportunities. But I don't think he'll break a receiving record. I don't think he'll break Billy Houghton's receiving rookie record of over 1,200 yards. Does he have a shot to maybe break some of Jaden Reed's rookie receiving records? Most receptions. Most touchdowns by a rookie. I think he's got a shot for that. I think he's in play for that. It's a big unknown because, well, for one, a lot will depend on health. We know that. And a lot will depend on how much they use Josh Jacobs. I think a lot. They really focused on the running game last year because it was successful, but also because of Jordan Love's injury and such, and some of the poor play from the receivers. But I think you're going to see a little bit of a different offensive approach this year from Green Bay. I think you have to. I think you got to keep teams guessing and always bring in some new wrinkles. But I think for my expectation, if I had to put a number to it, okay, Billy Houghton had 1,231 receiving yards in his rookie season. James Lofton had 818. Jane Reed had 793. Sterling Sharp had 791. if I had to put a number to it, I'm probably about 750, somewhere around there, in the 700s. Most receptions was Jayden Reed. He had 64 in 2023. I'm probably looking at between 50 and 60. Most receiving touchdowns, Jayden Reed had 8, tying him with Billy Houghton for the most by a Packers rookie. I think Matthew Golden's probably around 7. So I think a lot of us were around the same number. Now, Jayden Reed, if you add in his 2 rushing, he became the first Packers rookie to have 10-plus total touchdowns. I do think you're going to see Golden have some opportunities to run the football on jet sweeps, motions, that sort of stuff. Now, the interesting part to me is going to be the other rookie receiver on this, Savion Williams. How much of a factor is he going to be in this? Because here's one little fun nugget. This is a receiver we haven't talked a whole lot about. But Jayden Reed and Dontavian Wicks became the first rookie duo to each gain over 500 receiving yards since 2014. Can Matthew Golden and Savion Williams accomplish that feat again? I'm going to say no. And that's not a knock on either one of those guys. But if I had to pick, I'll say no. So my realistic, and I hope nobody's is expecting Golden to go out there and have 1,500 receiving yards and 15 touchdown catches and lead the league in receiving and such. That would be flippin' awesome, and I think we would all love that and want that to happen. That would be cool. That would be awesome. But I'm not expecting that. I'm going to have a little bit more realistic expectations. So I think for me, I'm looking at about that 750-yard mark, maybe a little bit low, but about 7 touchdowns. Probably around 50, 60 catches and such. Maybe I'm setting it a little bit lower because that way he can exceed those expectations a little bit.